All right, so this is a beginner's night on basic cyber self-defense. First of all, as this is a beginner night, like we've said at all of these, it's open to questions. If you've got a question, shout it. If I'm wrong, please tell me, in case someone does something stupid because I told them to. And then just so you know, this is for securing your own machines, not necessarily for like a CDC scenario. That's not to say that what's in here won't carry over, but the purpose is not to help you win at CDCs. So the first step when you go to secure something is to determine what level of threat you're looking at. If you're just pretty low level, you're not too worried about anything happening as long as Word works. I just need to type out my assignments, thanks. Sort of in the middle, this is where you know that your information is valuable and that bad things can be done with it, and you'd like to avoid that. And then sort of the higher level, this would be probably a lot of people in here, people who do advanced things, more than just going to YouTube and Word and all that, if you're actually playing with system settings and stuff. And then we have our last level, which is the paranoia level. My favorite paranoid person, Alex Jones of InfoWars. If you're not familiar with him, look him up. He's kind of funny. So, as we go through here, everything you'll see will go from levels 1 to paranoia. As you go, if you feel you fall more into like level 2, doesn't mean don't do what's in level 1. As you go, you just keep adding things to the list. So, level 1 is just the people who, as long as their computer turns on, they're happy. First thing is click the update button. I know it's really annoying sometimes when Adobe wants to update their stuff every 5 minutes, but those updates usually have some sort of security patch in there. This isn't a fail-safe, obviously. If all you had to do to not get hacked was hit update, no one would ever get hacked. But what it will do is prevent old viruses from coming back and haunting you. Stop low-level skiddies who just kind of looked up how do I metasploit and started typing commands. Reasons you wouldn't do this, your computer might be slow for like 5 minutes while it updates, so there's really no reason not to hit the update button. Just do it. Choose some decent passwords. In the corner there's my favorite piece of shell marketing advice. So first rule for passwords, don't use the same one again and again and again, because if someone breaks your first box where your password is on there, they can then go to another box and use that password, as was demonstrated earlier. Don't share your passwords. Don't tell your buddy what your domain admin password is so that he can go do something funky. There's really no need for it. Avoid patterns in your passwords. So things like this are not so secure, because if I find a couple of those passwords, I can start to guess that, well, maybe he uses Logan followed by a number for all of his passwords, and then I just start guessing and get it pretty quick. Avoid really common changes in your passwords. So this is stuff like just simple letter substitutions. 3 and E is a really common one. Anything that seems super intuitive and comes to your mind right away, maybe don't do that, because it'll come to everyone else's mind right away too. Another good thing to do is check to make sure it's not already in a dump somewhere. There are quite a few of them available on the internet. The RockU one was immensely popular. It's included in Kali. It's the go-to for most people breaking or trying to brute force passwords. There's a website, haveibeenpwned.com. This will let you check your password to see if it's already in a dump. Other than that, it will also check email addresses. So if you submit an email address to them, and then they'll say, hey, we found your email address in a dump from whenever. They have a couple other things on there, but those are the two that I find most useful. Install some free antivirus. You can use MSF Venom to get right past this most of the time, but it will stop old viruses from coming back and haunting you. It'll stop some of the share this or your mother will die next week posts that have viruses embedded in them. Couple of popular ones, Avast. This is the one I would recommend if you're just looking for some free antivirus. AVG is another very popular one. I'm not a huge fan of this one, especially if you go to try and remove it. It really doesn't like to respect that uninstall button very much. Bitdefender is another one that's out there. I am not intimately familiar with Bitdefender, but I've heard some very good things about it. These are just a couple of options. There are definitely a lot more. You just kind of have to go and look and see what you feel you trust and what fits your needs. So then moving up a little bit, level 2. This is, at this point you've realized that, hey, maybe you can do things with my computer if you get into it, so please don't do that. One of the big things you should do is check your browser, especially Chrome users. Chrome has a lot of nasty little settings they like to enable by default. So I would just go ahead and opt out of all of them. Make sure it asks you anytime it wants your location. Get rid of unique advertising IDs, disable tracking. Another really good thing to do is get extensions. uBlock Origin is an ad blocker. A lot of people use AdBlock Pro. uBlock Origin does not allow any sort of advertising through. Well, AdBlock Pro does, excuse me. They also do some work to try and prevent tracking. Privacy Badger is actually a purpose-built tracking stopper. It goes through and tries to keep the Amazon API and the Google API from tracking you in super sneaky ways in their ads. HTTPS Everywhere is an excellent plugin or extension, depending on your browser. It will force HTTPS if at all possible and warn you if HTTPS is not there. This will help prevent you against man-in-the-middle attacks by making sure that everything is encrypted and nothing is in plain text. VPNs are another great way to kind of avoid man-in-the-middling. Word of advice is avoid the free ones. This is definitely a case of if you are not paying for the product, you are the product. A lot of VPNs will track your data, which kind of defeats the purpose. So if you use a paid one, those usually do not. It's still something you need to look into. A couple of good ones, OVPN, Proton VPN, and CryptoStorm. Those all have no track, no logs. They are paid, of course, with the exception of Proton VPN, which does have a free plan with limited features for one device, so not really optimal, but if you're in a pinch, it'll work. Another word, a lot of these VPN providers have, they're called warrant canaries, which are a piece of text somewhere on their website that's updated at a set interval. The purpose of these is if the government comes to them and says, hey, we need all your data, they are not legally allowed to tell you that they've been requested to give over all your data, and they will give over all your data because they don't really have a choice. The warrant canaries would then just be not updated. So then if you go look and see that your weekly update isn't there, you should stop using that site because it's been, they've had a data request from some government agency, whether that's a US agency or otherwise. So now on the topic of Windows, Windows sucks. By default, they do send pretty much everything to Microsoft. In Windows 10, this is. So everything you see there and a whole bunch more just gets sent to Microsoft. They can do whatever they want with this, really. Cortana is a wonderful little friend, except that Cortana is basically a keylogger, and Microsoft has access to all of that. In addition, Cortana will track your purchases, your calendar info. They even track like your music, movies. Just they can build a very complete profile on you with this. So Cortana is really your best friend. And then Microsoft can share it all. They can give this away to any third party they want. And whether you like it or not, you agreed when you logged in or downloaded the ISO or installed it. You've given your consent pretty much every step of the way. A little bit of good news. If you don't want to give up Windows 10, I know I myself use it as my primary OS just because I have a lot of Windows-only programs I use pretty regularly. There is a program put out. It's called Win10 Privacy, and It's not perfect, but it will go through and disable a lot of those default options. So not as much of your data is sent to Microsoft right away. Word of warning, the website is in German. It was a German guy that made it, but Google Translate does a wonderful job. And the program itself is actually in English, and it works pretty well. So level 3, moving up here. Again, this is probably where most people in this room would fall. You know what you're doing with your computer. You might be doing some funny stuff with your computer. If you're playing with Kali, you would better fall into this category. First thing you should do is download Tor. Tor is an excellent web browser. It used to be incredibly slow. It's now, I'm not gonna say as fast as a normal browser, but definitely very close. So the uses for Tor is it anonymizes all of your traffic. So this can be done to avoid censorship in certain countries, or if like your network administrator doesn't want you going to some website. You can avoid some tracking. Obviously, if the tracking is embedded in the web page itself, it won't really help you too much there. It helps avoid analysis. Excuse me. So, Iowa State can't go and see that I'm visiting, 500 Wikipedia articles on the Holocaust for some reason. I don't know why they'd care, but if they do, Tor will help them not see it. Another thing you can do with Tor is access a lot of hidden services. These are .onion addresses. They exist on the Tor network only. They're not usually things like, Google.onion. They're just random strings. These services can be anything from just search engines like Google all the way to incredibly very illegal things. So don't go there unless you know what you're doing. Word of warning with Tor, it's not idiot-proof. If you log into something over Tor, you've still logged in, and it's not invulnerable. There are still attacks that can effectively make Tor useless. For example, if it's a not very commonly visited website and you're the only one on your network on Tor, and there's one Tor connection to that website, they can make a pretty good guess that you were that Tor user. There was someone a while back who called in a bomb threat over Tor, and that's how they got him, because they said, hey, you made a Tor connection about half a second before this website got a Tor request. So just be careful, use your common sense. Tor's not perfect. Another thing you should consider is upgrading your email, especially if you're using Microsoft Outlook or Microsoft Mail, I believe it is, in Windows 10. Again, for the same reasons we discussed earlier, Microsoft sucks. Thunderbird is a good alternative. It'll do a lot of things for you. More than just email, it'll take care of your news feed, your Twitter. You can do IRC through it. I've never actually set that up, but I'm told it does work. It is open source. Upgrade your OS because Windows still sucks. Linux is probably your safest bet. If you've never used Linux before, Ubuntu is probably a good place to start. Really up to you, do some research. It's fairly user-friendly-ish. If you want something a little bit more secure, maybe, Debian is all open source stuff. It's not quite as user-friendly. It's still perfectly manageable. You don't have to do everything by command line. And then just as sort of an aside, any of you who have used Kali, that is what Kali is based off of. So using Debian might be a good way to kind of help you learn to at least navigate your way through the non-hacking side of Kali. Another good thing to look into, some two-factor authentication. So not just your passwords in case you didn't follow one of the earlier steps and used a bad password. YubiKey is a pretty common way to do this. What it is a physical device that plugs into your computer, and on it is a key which matches another key on your computer. To transmit the key, you just push a little button on the YubiKey device and it just sends the key across. If it matches, it authenticates. If not, it doesn't. What this really does is just make sure that I can't log into your computer if you walk away with your password. If your password is "I'm super safe" and I type that in, I can't get in without your key. It is better than using text messaging based two-factor, because that can be man-in-the-middled. There was a paper put out pretty recently on how to do that without physical access to the phone. That was kind of interesting. YubiKey is nice because it's pretty idiot-proof. You just kind of plug it in, hit install, and then it works. It'll work with both your PC and your Android phone using NFC. So you just tap the YubiKey to the back of your phone if you have it set up, and it logs you in. Using a password manager is a good idea. Don't use Apple Keychain, that's a bad idea. Master password is a good one because the passwords are never stored anywhere. They're generated on the fly from a master password and information about the site. So it would create a password based on google.com and your username and your master password, and send that to Google. So then Google has the hash of that, and that password is never stored anywhere because it's calculated again each time because you put in your master password into master password, and it generates the same thing again from the same data, which means that it's never stored. You do have to use a good password because if they get your password, if they get your master password, they can log into anything with master password. KeyPass is another one. On this one, the keys are generated and then stored. They're encrypted twice with AES and 2FISH. So theoretically, it should be pretty hard to break. You can access the database with either a master password or a key file, which would just be stored on your machine, and it would be called every time. Again, use a good password, because if the password to all your other passwords gets broken, you lose. So then on to the top level. If you're completely paranoid and really don't want to be hacked and think that the Russians are personally targeting you, my advice is this: my guaranteed hack-proof method: delete everything, burn your computer, and cancel your credit cards. The simple fact is there's no way to guarantee that you'll never be hacked. You can try, you can do a really good job, and you can make it really hard for someone to attack you. But there's no way to guarantee that you're never going to be attacked unless you completely segregate yourself from everyone else. And at that point, it kind of defeats the purpose of having a laptop. So, some parting thoughts, just quick words of advice here. Treat your computer like your car. Don't take it to sketchy places. If you don't lock it, someone else might get into it. And don't let strangers in while you're using it. So this is roughly equating to: don't go to the sketchy websites, lock it when you walk away, and don't download strange files. If you want to learn more, a really good website, privacytools.io. They have all kinds of information on different programs that you can use to help increase your security. They have everything from OSs you can use to protect yourself more, to messaging apps, to really everything, any sort of software that could help improve your security. I highly recommend you go check them out and download some of the programs on there. Pretty much everything they have is open source, which is good for security. So yeah, recommend you check them out. Does anyone have any questions? I know that one went kind of quick, but any questions at all? Okay. Think that does it?